Okay, so I put the title of this slide massive, so hopefully you get the message that writing this essay shouldn't be something that you get put off by doing. You probably didn't pick this course because you like writing essays, that's a given. You're creative people, that's why you picked an art-based course. So what your teachers tend to do is they'll refer to it as maybe a personal study, or they'll say the extended writing project or extended research project. Depending on what exam board you're with, they have got different names for it, to be fair, but chances are they're just trying to sort of hide the fact that you are writing an essay, because usually you would all groan if you heard that. So look at the ones on the right. They don't look like a conventional essay. They should be illustrated. If you're doing photography, it'll feature more photography than it would do illustration and graphics, but it doesn't need to look like a boring Word document where you've just wrote thousands and thousands of words. Okay, it can be fun, trust me. Okay, so the study should be between 1,000 and 2,500 words, and although the study's marked as part of your body of coursework, so it's all integrated into one, it's difficult to justify high marks if the essay is weak. So the key to this really is the research. If you do good research, it should write itself really. You've got to get a bit of opinion-based sort of writing in there as well. The study should be illustrated. So by that, it could be photographs, it could be screenshots, and I'll show you sort of nice ways to incorporate screenshots later on. It could be your own drawings, but as you can tell from the example on the right, he's writing about Nike. So naturally, looking at Michael Jordan and his influence on the sort of fashion industry, how he's sort of coming as a world leading athlete, that factors into his essay. So it just makes sense. Get him in there doing a slam dunk, it's more engaging to see a page like that for sure, rather than just reading it as a sort of normal Word document. It should closely relate to your pathway. So by pathway, I mean, if you are into doing sort of animation, you shouldn't really then go off on a bit of a tangent and do your essay about like traditional processes in graphic design in the 1980s, because chances are you're not really that into doing research on that. I would always say to my students, choose this to link to your personal project. That way, and this isn't cheating, you can swap the content from essay to portfolio, sketchbook, whatever you want to call it. If you've done some research, like this student on the left has looked at Alice and Rachel, that naturally can go into the portfolio. It's not just something that she's done for the point of this essay and then forgotten about. It's something that adapts and it can fit in both parts of their work. Okay, so you've got to show an understanding of art movements, historical or political context, and technological advances in the subject. So you don't need to be an expert, it's not a written test, but if you said something about an artist, let's take Picasso for instance, because everybody knows him. If you said, I really love Picasso's work, I can't wait to see what he produces next, people who are reading your essay, they're going to laugh at you. The guy's not alive, he's not going to make any artwork soon, is he? But hopefully everybody would sort of have enough about him to research who they're looking into, to find out if there's any important facts like that they probably need to be aware of. So technological advances, you don't need to be sort of talking about all the advances in graphic design in a chronological order. But if you're going to look at a piece of work and, for instance, it's a black and white photograph, and you say, oh, this is all right, the composition is lovely, but actually it would look better if it was in colour and it was a bit brighter, then you find out that was taken on a 35mm film camera 50 years ago. Again, you just look a bit daft, don't you? So you want to avoid that. Just make sure that you're aware of the time frame that whatever you're looking at was produced in. With the introduction, you don't want to go straight into the content either. What you want to make sure is you sort of slowly get the reader into it. You don't want to give away, like in this first opening paragraph up here, your conclusion. So what's this opening paragraph talking about? You can pause this obviously if you wanted to have a proper read of it, but it's just sort of introducing the topic. It's not going straight in with a conclusion right in the introductory paragraph, because otherwise it sounds like, what's the point in reading on? You've already sort of summed it up in a paragraph. Okay, so if your teacher usually said to you, go home tonight, watch some Netflix, that's your homework, you would probably take that, wouldn't you? But for some reason, when you say to students, you've got to look at different sources. You can't just look on the internet for your research. They get a bit of a sort of stumbling block at that point. And when you think about this and you break it down, like have a read through this list that I've put up at the top. There's so many things that you would naturally just do anyway, apart from maybe interviewing people and sort of collecting leaflets that are a bit more specialist. But the other, social media, YouTube, Netflix, iPlayer, checking on forums, that could be, looking at polls on Instagram and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be forums in the traditional sense. But there's so many good documentaries relating to your projects on Netflix that it's a massively underused source. Like, it's difficult, I know, to sort of screenshot sometimes from Netflix, but there is ways around that, and I'm sure you'll figure it out because you're a lot more sort of at one with technology than most of your teachers. But have a think, what have you watched on Netflix that links to your project? So there's an amazing documentary about social media called The Social Dilemma. That is basically a ready-made essay for whoever's doing a project in graphics to do with app design or social media, possibly even mental health, links in with social media quite a lot. So watch Netflix, have a look through it for proper relevant footage. Don't go in and put an Ozark in there if you're doing an essay about animation, because clearly you're just watching Ozark. But there's definitely useful stuff on there. Remember that. Okay, so it needs to include a quote. Now, how you incorporate that quote, it's optional. You could put it in the main body of your text, but what tends to happen is when students of mine start to make this look more like a graphic design student's made it. So they do a draft and they do that in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Then what I do is I mark that, I give them some feedback, and then I say to them, once you've made them amendments, make it into something that you yourself would want to read. So if that means sort of having a feature page where you've got a quote and you're sort of making that the entire body of that page, that's fine. All these three sort of examples on it look good for different reasons. And as you can see, they've put the quote there in bold. It's just a nice touch. They're sort of looking and going, how can I break this block of text up and make it into something that looks a little bit more attractive? It shows they've got a good grasp of typography. They understand the layout and composition of the page. So subconsciously, when the moderator's looking at this, they're going to be thinking, you understand graphic design, this looks nice. I'm tempted to believe that the teacher has put you on the right grade because I can see visually that you know what you're doing. What you don't want to do is present something that looks like you don't really understand graphics. It's laid out on Word and it's sort of over 12 pages, but half of it's because your formatting's jumped around by like 20 lines at a time when you've inserted a picture in that way that Word does when you move an image and then all of a sudden you get 3 extra pages. Don't we all love Word? Okay, so definitely include your own work. One of the main things that essays sort of fall down on in the draft is that they don't even mention their own work. Definitely mention your work. If you can include it, even better. I mean, depends how your course is structured, but I sort of allocate 2 weeks for writing the draft and doing the research, and then they get a week after I've marked it to sort of make this thing look a little bit more professional. At that point, you're going to be designing things that can come across into your portfolio. So the lad on the first page that I showed you, where he was basically looking at Michael Jordan, he's done a bit of a case study on Nike and Tinker Hatfield, laying out the typography to look like a trainer silhouette with the sort of synonymous swoosh. Dead easy to do, but really effective. And again, over on the left, they're looking at minimalism. They've pulled out a sketch that they've already got in the portfolio because they know it's going to fit in nicely with that page. And then lastly, this student is talking about social media being addictive. So he's gone and photoshopped sort of little embossed logos of the social medias that are popular. And it's a nice piece for him to put in his portfolio. He's got like a little bit of a process of how he got to that point, and it ended up being sort of 2 or 3 pages in his portfolio, as well as just an image that he's got going on within his essay. So as I mentioned earlier, screenshots are definitely something that you can drop in from the programs or the sort of documentaries and stuff that you've been watching. This is a bit more engaging, I think, actually putting them into the composition rather than just slapping a square sort of screenshot in there. They have just broken up a couple of frames. It goes nicely with this bit of custom type. And on the right, I know this student didn't make this for the essay. They made this sort of 3D render of a hand elsewhere in the project, in the main sort of body of the project, not the essay aspect. But it makes sense. It's the same student, these two pages, to sort of go, okay, I spent ages designing this hand. Now why don't I just go and make it part of my essay, just to sort of hold a block of text. You can imagine the sort of silhouette of a phone there fitting in. Really nice. Sometimes it is worth pointing out, this is my work, because if you look at a page like that, clearly you've not gone away and produced like a Hollywood level production as part of your work, but the hand's sort of so good, it could be overlooked and they might not realise that they've actually designed that. Right, so how do you talk about work? There's lots of different ways to teach you this, and I'll show you something that's probably more familiar to you on the next slide, but these first three, they're the most key. So state your opinion, explain the meaning of it. If you're looking at branding, sometimes the meaning is just as simple as they're trying to sell you the product, they want it to look cool, but obviously depending on what you're looking at, the meaning could be quite a big feature. And then how it influences your work, that's massive. The rest of them kind of just sort of reminders, so like sentence starters and stuff, so you know what sort of things you can talk about. What it isn't is this. So what we don't want is the artist's life story. We don't want to know that they went to school in Amsterdam and on the first week they got freshers flu and the favourite sort of cat is this rare breed that has no hair. Like, honestly, like, no one cares about what that artist has done in their life apart from their artwork, which sounds brutal, but if you don't like writing and then you're going to spend a whole bunch of time writing about something that ain't getting your marks, then don't do it. Like, the opinion, the meaning, how it influences your work, and then anything else that you can talk about in terms of how is it produced, what does it look like, but don't over describe it. If you're looking at a drawing of a pepper, you're not going to sort of talk about it in the minute fine detail because everybody knows you're looking at a drawing of a pepper. Okay, so that is another sort of way of explaining how you can talk about artwork or a designer's work. Sometimes it's called research, other times it's called image analysis. You probably don't want to read that now and think about that for a second. So if that's useful to you, pause this video, take a screenshot, go away and use it, knock yourself out, go for it. But I would hate to read that out to you now. And you've got to think, the person who's marking your essay is some sort of practicing artist, whether they're a teacher, whether they're retired from teaching or whatever, but they'll most likely be somebody who prefers looking at visuals. So if you present an essay and it looks like what's on screen now, you're sort of on a losing battle there, really. You need to break the information up. So this is a good example of that. There's a whole heap of text on this double page spread that's on screen, but it's so basic what he's done. And if I sort of go out of this now, if you look, that is literally a GIF that is inserted and he's just blocked it out. So it looks like he's sort of gone to town and done quite a sort of complex layout here, but he's not. He's just been clever about inserting bits of animation in there. Straight away, it's more engaging. Like, the text is split up into manageable chunks. Most people would be happy enough reading that. And the visuals are moving around. Even if they're not moving, they make the page look more appealing. Okay, so nearly at the end now of the essay. So your conclusion will be dead easy to write if you've posed a question at the start. So if you are doing about, let's say, graphics in the music industry, if you just call it graphics in the music industry, what are you going to sum up with? It's pretty tricky because you're not really answering anything. You've not sort of gone on a bit of a journey. So you've got nothing to sort of say. You're obviously going to have to put your opinion because this is a personal study and that is key to what you're doing. But if you go back to the music industry idea, if your question was, what impact has graphic design had on the music industry? Then throughout the course of the essay, you've got a purpose for looking at your research and what you're sort of going to go into, and then at the end you're answering how much of an effect has it had, and that's sort of up to you, but based on what you've researched. Okay, so likewise with the instruction that you do at the end, I'm recommending you to do it at the end anyway. Look at the title and go, I can't write my conclusion now. I'm going to have to come back to the title and rephrase it slightly. Now I know exactly what I researched. It's fine at the start to have a broad focus, but what you don't want to do is just say, yeah, I've looked at the music industry and graphics is pretty important because, like, you know, you buy stuff on face value, and I like stuff that looks cool. I wouldn't want to put a poster up on my wall of a band that I thought looked terrible and poster looks terrible. You know, you need to have a proper basis for it. Last but not least, for the essay, needs a bibliography. So what that shouldn't just be like google.com, wikipedia.com, and then like nevillebrody.com if you've looked at Neville Brody. It should be detailed. And remember, the more different sources you can get in there, the better. You don't just want website addresses if you can avoid it. Think about how you're going to make it look good. A couple of different ideas. One person there is into illustration. The other, more of a traditional sort of an effect. Nice sort of vignette going on in the background and a nice bit of typography with a bit of a mask going through it. Okay, so with these, I'm not going to talk through them. If you like them, screenshot them, pause the video. One's an essay plan, the other's just to sort of track your references, so to note them down as you go. Now this is important, that's why I've put it like huge on screen. So what I find is students go, I'm going to do all my research and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to start writing my essay. If that works, go for it. But I couldn't write an essay like that. What I would want to do is do a bit of research whilst it's fresh in my mind, start to write down what I found out. If that's a paragraph, great. If it isn't, revisit that sort of topic, add into it. Chop and change what you're doing. Don't just sit there looking at a blank Word document and go, right, I've got to write sort of 1,500 words ideally right now, because that's not a natural thing to do. So like it says at the bottom, research, write a bit, research, go away and do a bit more. If you don't remember anything else in this, try and remember that, because it'll make you feel a lot better about this task. So this is a checklist that I give to my students. Students seem to love checklists. As soon as you've got a checklist, boom, they're off. Love ticking that checklist. So again, might be a screenshot page this. This is sort of an old list what I used to use, the suggested topics. So what I'm going to do with this is, if I've got anyone actually sort of getting into this content, is I'll do a follow-up video where I go into more detail about the specific topics on screen. So let me know if this is useful in the comments below. Like, subscribe, do all the usual good YouTube stuff to sort of let me know if there's any point me even producing this content. The plan is to do a series of videos of key points in the course, and hopefully it'll help some of you out there. Cool. In a bit.